Hey guys, it's unfortunate, but after 4 days, little over 4 days, almost 100 hours after the launch, Last Epoch is just a total shit show, basically. So I wanted to provide some perspective from a few angles and have a few talking points for today. But not before I say that I really feel bad about this situation, in particular for the devs. I wouldn't necessarily say this is not deserved, because of course this is on the devs, right? I mean, it's their game, it's their servers, but they worked very hard. I've been following this game for years, almost 5 years, and it is sad to see that, the game's reputation and the developer's reputation and the Steam ratings and probably the critic scores at some point will not be very favorable to an otherwise good game. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about it. I have 4 talking points. I wanted to dive deep a little bit into the Steam reviews. That's one of them. The review bombing, the updates and transparency approach of 11th Hour Games, and then the impact of all of this on the future of the game. Starting with the reviews, what I have done is I've basically looked at all the negative reviews from the last couple of days. Well, clearly not all of them, because there's literally 10,000, but a couple hundred. Read through them and sort of tried to organize them or categorize them, like what are people typically complaining about. Now, of course, the vast majority is on the technical difficulties, right? The server issues, transition times, loading times, can't log in, LE61, online play currently unavailable. But this is, of course, the biggest sort of bulk of the negative reviews. But there are 4 other categories I sort of identified as well, which I think are much more interesting. The second reason why people are leaving negative reviews is because of the number of bugs in the game, which I can attest to. The 1.0 release brought a significant number of bugs that previously were not there. Also, there are still bugs there that were there some time ago, were reported but just not fixed. That's understandable, I think, to some extent, but there are quite a few new bugs. I personally had quite a few crashes to desktop. I don't think maybe not ever, but it was very rare for me to crash to desktop with Last Epoch. That just didn't really happen all that much. Audio mixing issues, those have been issues in the past, but the audio mixing is off. Skills not connecting to enemies, people are complaining about that. I've experienced that in the beta as well. Javelin throw, or whatever that skill is called, it just didn't hit the enemies like 30% of the time. Apparently this is going on right now as well. Several freezes, crashes. I have another weird bug where when I load into an echo in the Monolith of Fate, for the first 3-4 seconds I cannot cast any spells and my minions are just standing there, they don't do anything while I'm being attacked by hordes of enemies, because their AI is working but my spell casting is not. These bugs that I'm describing are all in the offline mode, so these are just game related bugs and people are complaining about those as well. Third interesting point is that you see some complaints about the community and the in-game chat. And this is mostly related to being negative about the game and then getting told, for example, that, just play another game, or just go back to Diablo 4 or stuff like that. Which can be annoying, right? Because these are people that paid a significant sum of money for a video game, which then just doesn't work for a lot of people. And then to go and tell people to just play another game or just wait until you can play the game, that is not how this works or should work. And people are complaining about that. I recognize that to some extent as well. There are definitely quite a significant number of people that are, no matter the cost, defending this game. And I think especially now, after 4 days of server issues and no real end in sight, you might want to sort of reconsider that approach, because this is inexcusable. Right? There is no excuse for this, and it is completely unacceptable. You cannot defend this. You can still say, you know, the game is good, and yeah, the game is good, but people can't play for 4 days. It's a problem. Fourth reason for a bunch of negative reviews, or the sort of recurring topics that you see in those negative reviews, are the expectations that were either set or not met by the developers. So on the one hand, and this I think has always kind of been the case, is that the developers have been very confident about this game from the very start, pretty much, because the tagline of the Kickstarter trailer was something along the lines of the next great ARPG. I think they still use this actually. Now, that's not exactly a humble approach to the game, and that's fine, right? That is also maybe a little bit cultural. Here in the Netherlands and in Europe, you're not really supposed to do that, culturally speaking. Like, we prefer that you just, like, you know, just be normal, just make your video game, be a little bit humble about it, and then when it's a success, you can sort of brag about it a little bit. I think in other parts of the world, showing off is more accepted, and maybe I'm not phrasing it entirely fairly here, but I think you know what I mean. And the other thing that people complain about is sort of the numbers expectations. If you read the somewhat early posts of 11th Hour Games, they say that they were humbled by the player count, which begs the question, and this is what people are asking in those reviews as well, like, how is it possible that you didn't expect these numbers? First of all, the marketing department of Last Epoch went completely bananas the last couple of weeks. There is an incredible amount of content and sponsored content out there regarding this game. Like, every ARPG streamer out there is basically making videos about this for the last 2-3 weeks. So the hype was enormous, and they sold 1 million copies. They said so themselves. Did you really not expect like 15-20% of those to show up? I mean, I think these numbers were to be expected by a lot of people, including myself, my own stream. We did a little mini game on the stream before the launch, like how many people do we expect? And the answers all varied from like 100 to 200k. Very decent, respectable numbers, but not out of the ordinary. I don't know for sure if they didn't expect it, but you could definitely read into the messages that they sent that they did not expect this. And the last point that I think is a very fair remark, and that I also experienced myself and many people with me, that if you played this game in early access after the 0.9 launch, which was March 2023, you would have experienced similar issues as people are experiencing right now. Meaning that if you in the past tried to play multiplayer and transition from one zone to another, it would take ages. Even in solo play throughout the campaign, you easily had loading screens of 15 to 20 seconds, and this was when 5 or 10,000 people were playing the game. The servers have never been good. Ever since this game got released, the servers have been crappy. Sometimes a bit more crappy, sometimes a bit less crappy, but these servers have been crappy since almost a year. And now you put 150,000, almost 200,000 people on those same servers. Well, I'm sure they created a bunch of extra instances, but yeah, they didn't really work too well with 5-10,000 people. And now we got 20 times that. Yeah. And now we're in this situation. And people are asking themselves like, hey, didn't they see this coming? Or maybe even worse, didn't they know and proceeded with the launch anyway? I think a fair question, because you could have played this game before and you would have run into similar issues. That is not to say that because you have the same functional issue, it is also the same technical issue, but it is an absolutely fair statement that these servers were never on par with what you would expect out of any game, right? Indie or not, at some point you should just have a stable server, and these things were not. They have never been, and right now they definitely aren't, which is a problem. Topic number 2 is review bombing. I was triggered by this because of the post by Judd. This was a lengthy post before the launch in which Judd said that they have been preparing for months, did load testing, all sort of other testing, and they were very confident going in. As Judd himself stated, this post aged like bad milk, I think the expression is. Forgive my knowledge on English or American expressions. I know a few, I think it was bad milk. I suppose instead of fine wine, right? This was not a fine wine moment, it was a bad milk moment. So they're graciously admitting that was not a great post. But in that post they mentioned that they were afraid that the game would be review bombed, which triggered me a little bit. I thought, well, I don't think that this is a review bombing situation. So I tried to find a definition. Here is the definition from dictionary.com. To manipulate an online rating system with a semi-organized campaign of unfavorable user reviews, often as a general statement of disapproval for a creator, a publisher, or other business, rather than a genuine opinion about a specific product or experience. And I think that latter part is important. So a review bomb is something that happens mainly due to things that are outside of the content of the game. So examples are, for example, Nier Automata was review bombed by Chinese players because it didn't have a Chinese language. Multiple games have been review bombed because they added DRM. Another example of a review bomb was the game Firewatch, where the developer did a fake DMCA takedown on a PewDiePie video, and as a result fans of PewDiePie downvoted the game, and the community of the game downvoted the game because they did the DMCA takedown. These are all examples where a game gets negative user reviews for something that is not related directly to the game. And if you compare that with a game like Golem, for example, which is just a bad game, would you say that Golem got review bombed? Not really, right? It's just a bad game and people leave a review because they don't enjoy the game. And similarly, I don't think that Last Epoch is currently being review bombed because these people have a full right to leave a negative review on something that is absolutely game related because they literally can't play the game. And so I don't think you can really say that this is done with like negative intent or that this is done sort of outside of the content of the game. No, they want to play with their friends and they can't. Or they want to play the trade faction and they can't. Or they bought a fancy edition with MTX in it and you can't see the MTX because MTX only shows in the online mode and not in the offline mode. So there are plenty of reasons to want to play online rather than offline, and it shouldn't have to be a choice in that sense that people are now being forced to play offline or stand in queue for I don't know how long and have loading times for how long. That shouldn't just simply not be the case. People are unhappy about this and they're leaving a negative review. It is completely fair. And then it is true that the game itself is a great game. That is true. But if those people never get to experience it because of 4-day-long server issues and counting, yeah, I don't think we can speak of a review bomb situation. This is just negative reviews, and rightfully so. Then we get into another interesting topic, which is the transparency of 11th hour games. Now, first of all, I want to say that I think the stance that they're taking on this is commendable. You would love to see this from more developers and more publishers because it provides a lot of insight. But this insight that it provides is also a problem because they have been very honest for the last 4 days. But what that has resulted in is that you read now through all of these messages, there's like, I don't know, 40, 50 of them at this point, and you basically start realizing like they haven't got a clue, right? They have no clue what's going on. It's left and right, it seems like servers are falling apart, then it's an API, then it's matchmaking, then it is login, then it is queue times. It's like all over the place. It is a repeating pattern. There's no real progression. There's no real favorable outlook. There's no real perspective on any of this. And we know this because they are being so transparent about it. But now this transparency is also feeding into this idea that they're basically not capable of running these servers, apparently. I mean, that's kind of the only conclusion you can draw from this if you read the updates and the messages. I'm not trying to argue that they should be less transparent, but it has definitely led to a sort of unfavorable outcome here. Whereas perhaps if we would be less in the know and wouldn't know how many patches they deployed and what they thought the root causes were, that turned out to not be the root causes, because we're effectively in the same state as 100 hours ago, which is crazy if you think about it, but it's true. There are people that are literally unable to log in right now in my Discord. I'm sure that for some people the game is playable, but yeah, just look at the negative reviews. It is still a massive issue. And look at the updates. There is no real perspective. There's no real progression. It's a big issue, and we know it's a big issue because of this transparency. So the downside of this transparency becomes pretty clear as well. And I'm not arguing they shouldn't be transparent. I think though that now that you see what this transparency leads to, maybe there's a bit more to say about, being a bit more PR about it, if you will. And this brings me to the last part of the video, the future of Last Epoch. What does this mean for the future? And I think you can sort of separate the shorter term, the first couple of months, and then the long run. The shorter term is problematic, I think. Because what happened basically in the last 4 days, to put this a little bit in perspective, is the last 4 days they have had roughly 10,000 negative reviews on a grand total of 50,000 reviews. That means that the game went from what I think was an 83 or 85, maybe even higher positive rating on Steam, to a now almost mixed overall rating. It's at 71%. If this goes on for one more day, they are probably at a mixed overall rating of 70% or 69%. And this is not something that you easily recover from, because people don't go back necessarily and change their review. Some will do this, but others are basically at this point done with the game. That review will be there forever. You don't really get any notifications of negative reviews. Steam never asks you from, hey, do you think still that this is should be a negative review? That's just not a thing that happens. And so a lot of these negative reviews will be there as a sort of permanent stain on the game, which is problematic, but you can't blame them, right? The game is not playable online. You can't blame these negative reviews. The second thing why it on the shorter outlook is problematic is because there is no end in sight. There is no perspective as to when this will be solved. But for the immediate sort of next 2-3 months that this was, I think, supposed to be their moment, right? Because they're launching at a perfect time. This is a great launch window. There's nothing else really going on in the ARPG world. And it's going to be a little bit of time, probably 1.5 months before the next League of Path of Exile. This was Last Epoch's moment to shine. And it is not only not shining, it is failing pretty hard. Which is, I think, a real problem, a financial problem, reputational problem. People are clearly buying less copies of the game because they see all these negative reviews, and rightly so. People are buying less MTX because a good number of people are playing offline at the moment, and you don't see MTX offline. Like, there would be zero incentive for me to buy MTX because I play offline, I can't even see them. And I think this is the effect that these issues are having on the first couple of months. And at some point, we will have the next league of PoE in a month's time. The hype for that begins, and then people will not really play Last Epoch anymore until 1.1. But who is to say what happens at 1.1, right? In the long run, people will have this game in their rotation. In the long run, they'll probably find their way between the other ARPGs. But yeah, in the end this is a massive L, and it's a real shame. I think it's a real shame because, like I said, the game without the server issues is good. It's a great game. I'm enjoying myself quite a bit. I still have the same complaints that I used to, but I'm not really gonna go into that. But I think if there were no real server issues, this game would have been a solid 8 out of 10. But right now, yeah, you can't really recommend the game until they solve the issues, and who knows when that will be. I have no clue. Maybe in a week's time, maybe in 2 weeks' time. So that's the perspective, that's my perspective on the game. I really hoped that this wouldn't happen. I think most people expected a day, maybe 2 of issues because, you know, that's just how it goes. But as bad as this, yeah, I feel for them. I think it is of course their own mistake, right? Like, there's no one else to blame but the devs. But that doesn't mean that, you know, I think it's deserved or something. I don't. I know how hard these people worked on this game. I've been following them for a long time. And it's really sad to see, honestly. Like, a good product basically being wasted by bad servers. But ultimately, yeah, they got themselves to blame. And that is the sad reality of it. You can't really blame anything else. So, ladies and gents, not the most cheerful video, but yeah, what can I say about a situation like this? So, I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed videos like this, please like, subscribe, I appreciate it. I really wish the ESG devs all the best in trying to solve this mess, and hopefully in time the game can recover. But right now it's looking pretty grim. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon. Bye bye.